I may be able to. How do I do this?
It's better than what it was. I can see it there. It's better than what it was.
Yeah, now there's a chance of opening the.
Well, so this is really not that exciting. I hope you like the anticipation of this hasn't been building up too much, because it's a very, very basic bar clamp at the moment. It's more of a proof of concept or technical preview than anything else. It doesn't actually do anything particularly useful, in my opinion, at the moment. But it certainly lays the foundation for something that could be used quite easily, I think. The integration work, that it is probably the hardest bit of it, and that's all done. I'll just get rid of that. So what we've done is add a new item to the utilities menu. By default, like if you're not logged in, it uses a session cookie for logging into UCS, which is the credentials are actually persisted to disk on the Crowbar server, and then those credentials are used to generate a session cookie, which can then be used for subsequent UCS API calls, and that session cookie is in the Rails session. So you could.
Adam, you want to mention what USC is supposed to be doing? Is it just the common logging interface, or?
Okay, so I should start at the beginning. So UCS is Cisco Unified Computing System. It's a one-stop shop for managing the data center. From the little I've seen, it's actually really impressive and comprehensive, and it really does manage everything from rack servers to blades. So what we're seeing here is the Java-based UCS client, which is connecting to an emulator which I have running in a virtual machine, which is actually a pretty good emulator. I've got it running there. You can log in and tweak the configuration, and there's also a web page, a control panel from which you can do things like change the inventory of the hardware that's emulated on startup. So I just set it up to have a few rack servers, a couple of fabrics, and a blade chassis with six servers in, and you can go to granularity of configuring all the different hardware, even down to the number of DIMMs and CPUs and so on in the emulator. The only catch about the emulator is that it accepts any authentication credentials. And I have tested against a real UCS instance, so I have no way of being absolutely sure that the authentication is working, but I'm about as sure, 99% sure that it is. So it provides this server, and there's an API server, obviously, and that's what the bar clamp connects to and performs calls against. So the first one is just to authenticate. So, like I said, you can just literally put anything in while we're using the emulator. It doesn't know what the username and password are, but this is the endpoint which I've put on the admin network, and it has this funny suffix there, which I have no idea what that's required for, but it is. So we log in, and what it does, it just does a basic set of API calls to inventory, just to see what's on the server, and then just lists out the particular hardware components. Now, this is obviously not a nice user interface as it stands. Could be prettied up a lot and made a lot smarter, but like I said, it's just a proof of concept really at the moment. It's displaying rack units individually, and then it will also expand a blade chassis so that you can see individual blades within the chassis. So these will correspond to the that we're simulating in the emulator. So blade 6. Let's see if I can find it in the.
Adam, what you just showed is exactly what the body gram shows from the inventory that you test.
I'm sorry, the audio is really bad. I couldn't understand that.
Okay, let me try again. The UI which you just showed in the previous slide, previous screen. That is basically what the bar clamp does right now, based upon the inventory which UCS has under management. Is that correct? Right?
Yeah. Yeah. So it does an API call to get an inventory, and then you can select boxes, and then you can click on reboot or something. And then it will send the appropriate API call to do power operation. Now, unfortunately, the power operations are also not simulated in the emulator. So even though I'm very almost as sure as I can be that it's making the right API calls and it gets the right responses back, but nothing actually happens in the emulator. That you don't see any power state change events. But I'm pretty sure that if we did this against a real UCS server, that it would work.
Okay.
So, and the other functionality that we have at the moment, which does actually work, or at least I hope it works, I haven't tested it for a couple of weeks, is it will look, there are a couple of hard-coded service profile templates, actually. I think it should say profile template there rather than just profile. And it looks for these hard-coded names. And I'll create one now, if I can remember how to do it.
That's all right.
Here we go.
I didn't want to drag you into the details. I was trying to comprehend is USC has its own, the GUI interface. And the question is, instead of creating the one on the bar clamp for that, that you basically just bring up the USC one and use that. As a part of UCS, sir, as part of the Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's only doing an inventory at the moment, but you could, it's a rich API, so anything that can be done currently through this Java client or any other client, I think could be done through the bar clamp as well potentially. But it's an enormous API. There's if you look, the documentation is actually linked from the control panel, and it's actually really impressive. And if they'd done this in a way that it encouraged industry-wide adoption, it could have been a perfectly good kind of generalized API for managing a data center, but I'm guessing it will never be used outside UCS really, just because of its proprietary nature. So it's very rich indeed, and it seems to work pretty nice. It's just a standard XML RPC API. I've played around with it a bit, and yeah, it works. So anything. I mean, I can show you how simple it is to. I've got the code
That's
here.
Fine.
So here's. This is just config resolve class that just looks up, basically gets any instances of the given class. So you got class ID as the parameter. Let's just make this a bit wider. So you can just say, give me all objects in the system of this particular class ID, and then it will return all the instances, and then you can do whatever you want with those, do individual operations on them. And so when I didn't write this code from scratch, I think we paid some contractor to do it or something. I'm not sure exactly, but it wasn't really written in the Rails way so much when I inherited it, and I've kind of Railsified it and done things in the conventional way. So like authentication is done through a Rails filter, and you can see the credentials are persisted in an XML file under here. Here are the two service profile templates that I was talking about. So I'll just create one now. So we go create service profile template. It has to be called one of these. Wait, what was it called again? SUSE Cloud Compute. Okay, I think that's being created.
Yeah, Adam.
Yeah.
Just from a time perspective, I'm gonna start asking you to wrap up.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm done. If I hit reload now, if I've done it right. Yeah, there we go. So now you can select one and hit set as a compute node. So you can select a particular server and say, okay, I want this to be a compute node, and then it would apply, and then you hit apply, and it will tell it to clone an instance of that template and do the appropriate hardware configuration within UCS, which will set up the node ready to be assigned to a compute role.
Does that also inject it into Crowbar from that action?
It doesn't do anything else on the Crowbar side. It's just talking purely to the API at the moment. So you can see, it's created that. So that's it. Oh, and there's a settings page for like the login page you can go to as well for logging out and changing credentials. There you go. So you could like click log out and then change the endpoint to something else or whatever.
So the use case that you're building towards is being able to use the UCS API by remote to tell UCS to configure a node, and then ultimately it'll get added to the Crowbar system for provisioning, for final provisioning.
Yeah.
That's sort of the.
Yeah. So you could use UCS to set up the the VLANs correctly or whatever, and then do the normal provisioning cycle, that kind of thing. But I mean, I didn't really think too hard about the use cases. I just sort of inherited what was already there and made it work, basically. So there's a lot more potential than it's just a proof of concept at the moment, I think.
Makes sense. Cool. Thank you for doing the demo. Actually, I think that it did live up and exceed expectations. That's pretty cool. It's good to see.
Oh, thanks.
It's new functionality to see that type of capability surfacing. It's a new discovery mechanism, really.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say one of the things on our agenda is Crowbar 2. We did a demo the other day. I videoed it, and so I can actually I'll upload that video. It shows some of the latest Crowbar 2 progress of bootstrapping an admin node and creating an initial network, and some of the just reflects the latest progress. I don't want to take the time here since we have it on video, but I think it's nice to end sprints with demos, which I really like, and so I think an uploaded demo should be sufficient for that. I'm getting a thumbs up from the room here. Cool. Let me jump back to
the agenda.
I'm pulling it up.
Okay. We definitely need to discuss the branching strategy and sync up on all of the things that are needed for that.
So we did the demo. And I've been recording so I can upload that demo. Yes. Okay. And so, yeah, I think the major topic for this is status of Pebbles branch and polls is the primary topic. Before we jump into that, because that's going to take up the rest of the meeting, I suspect. We still haven't done the team introductions page. That's a documentation thing. If people think that's important, we need to find a place to do it. Let's take that one to the email list, and I think a lot of the documentation pieces we can take to email.
Yeah.
Simon, is that cool? You've been thinking on that. Okay, cool.
Maybe I should spend 1 minute to mention the status of the JIRA and what we are planning in the longer term type thing. You can skip it. It's not critical.
What's the ETA on it?
No ETA. But the goal is basically we have a JIRA working. It's not work properly. The JIRA doesn't work properly with SSL right now. Until that is completed, we are on hold on that.
Okay.
Once that is done, then we'll have on the call discussion of how to transition all of the issues out of the GitHub to that wiki, Trello boards, and everything else to have a single place where we can track and manage everything. Just mention it's not completely dropped. Still in progress. It's slowly moving forward.
Great time to discuss it. So this is going to be handled by email. Crowbar 2, we've been making progress on the bootstrap and the networking and the configurations. So that progress is still on track and accelerating. The biggest thing that is worth mentioning is just for the Hong Kong, we've been talking about having a couple of days. Dell's committed several be in Hong Kong early at the OpenStack Summit. The focus of that will be hacking on Crowbar 2. And as we get closer to that date, we'll refine the exact schedule. But the thought is spend the first day doing docs and cleanup and actually training materials and really focus on that. And then the next couple of days hacking and on site definitely. And if people want to get engaged remotely, we'll be very focused at that point on that type of thing. So that's really, we've been talking about this for a long time. I think that we're not planning we'll plan the agenda more as we get closer, but it's not going to be a training session as much as a technical, as a hack interaction. Okay. Other questions or topics before we jump into Pebbles, Poll, and Roxy branch? If you have other items, please trying to keep an Etherpad up for the sprint so we can build an agenda as things go, pull them off the mailing list. Okay. All right. So there's at least 70 pull requests in the backlog on Pebbles.
85 is up today in the morning. Not all of them for Pebbles. There's probably about 5 or less for other stuff.
Okay.
And that's the reason for this, one of the reasons for this discussion.
Okay. Somebody help take notes on the Etherpad. We did some analysis on this, but go ahead, Arkady.
So I think that the main, so the good news and usual news. So the good news is the smoke test is fully functional, thanks to a lot of people on the Dell side and Roxy side spending a lot of time handling, getting to that spot. So the goal from this point forward is to maintain that state. In other words, as we do in the merges and doing the pulls, the smoke test is operational. That means at least to the minimal degree possible, to the minimal degree allowed, the branch is usable. Okay. So thus we're going to try to go through all the pull requests quickly. So as a part of that, I wanted to mention the discussion on the Roxy. So I sent out the PDF file of attempt trying to propose the branching strategy going forward to some degree. And this is one of the things I wanted to discuss in general, but more narrow focused on the Roxy and the Pebbles interaction. So the Pebbles, as have been used all the time before, is what we call de facto community branch. In other words, there is no product released out of that. This is basically everybody, it's a head of the tree. Everybody's pull request submitted against that, vetted to the process and tested to, degree possible before merging stuff. So the plan is that work right now on Pebbles is primarily targeted for the OpenStack Grizzly. And as we move forward, we propose that we create another branch called Pebbles to start the work on the Havana. The goal for that branch, at least in the short term, is basically for the Hong Kong summit to have a community branch which, supports Havana. So the hope is that we will be able to demonstrate it at the summit, or at least let people know about it and let them go and try it out. To what degree the functionality which Havana introduces the branch will be able to support, well, that's TBD. I think, given the amount of time, the bar should be set fairly low. It should be just work on the Havana code base and support the current functionality which Pebbles supports. If we can get more than that, that's great. Any comments, any suggestions, discussions on that?
So from that perspective, Pebbles is going to remain the Grizzly, and I realize this is very OpenStack focused, right? Where we also have releases. There's Cloudera releases on these things too, and the next release of the Cloudera packaging would also be on the Roxy.
Correct. It's basically basically the way I look at that the current products and the current development. And the current Crowbar development on that code base will stay open as a community branch, but since we are mostly talking about OpenStack, it's Grizzly code base.
And Pebbles will remain Grizzly while Roxy becomes the Havana.
That is correct. That is correct. Notice that as we introduce other bar clamps and other functionality, for example, there is a continuous discussion within Pink, even though we hope that by this time it will be completed. It's not done yet on the Pebbles code base. So we expect
Are we expecting changes to Pebbles is basically going to be stable patch only at this point? That's the goal?
Since I expect to continue to merge the OpenStack deliverables for Grizzly into that and make it available for the community. But I don't expect there will be too much active development because OpenStack development Grizzly is, is done. My recommendation that the new type of functionality, not only for the OpenStack but for the other components, should be retargeted for Roxy for Havana code base branch. Of course, if somebody wants to also create a pull request for that against Grizzly, against Pebbles, welcome. It will be reviewed by the usual process.
But I want to clarify.
So are we declaring the Pebbles branch a maintenance only branch then?
That's a question for discussion. I'm typing it, but we need to discuss it. And so there's a couple of points in this. I was going to have you pause to allow other people to speak.
What alternatives
targeted for Roxy.
You can. Fair enough.
Timing's a good question.
Timing. Yeah, fair enough. By the way, I mean, I didn't say that the recommendation was, as John proposed, to froze for maintenance only pebbles, but we have not made any decision on that.
Okay. Well, also, one of the things that I think we're trying to do is the Crowbar core change. Crowbar core itself would have minimal changes because we're really past feature freeze for Crowbar 1 because new features should surface on the Crowbar 2 branch. It's our intention not to make any meaningful changes to Crowbar 1 except in severity 1 fixes.
For whatever changes. New bar clamps. Yeah, for new bar clamps, if there is some requirement changes for lawn apps to do that, or definitely display them, then of course the Crowbar changes for that for lawn apps are allowed and will be done.
So is Roxy level 2 though? Bar clamp?
No.
So still 1.
So to be precise, the Roxy is, think of the Roxy as a pebble, but instead of using the Grizzly code base, it will be using the Havana code base. And Havana is fluid; it's not released yet, so it's in the it haven't even reached RC. It's have not reached even RC1 yet, so it's very fluid, and we expect that. In order to be the most productive work on Roxy, we should definitely spend much more effort on making sure that the PFS environment is fully functional, as we will be continuously pulling the latest and greatest things out of the OpenStack itself.
But that said, we're not expecting any breaking changes around Crowbar core, so a bar clamp written for Roxy should work against pebbles. We're not necessarily testing that.
Correct.
Well, on that
score, encourage people.
On that score, should a bar clamp written for Roxy also ideally be capable of being implemented on Crowbar 2.0?
No. That is, we are, as a design goal, Crowbar 2 is trying to minimize changes between the chef code. However, you will have to modify the bar clamp frameworks, and also the way that they're initialized and started is going to have to change. So there will be fundamental changes to bar clamps between 1 and 2.
So that work will need to be done anyhow. There's no point of trying to, and we'll have to transition all of the existing bar clamp, the workload bar clamps from the Roxy into on CV2O code base, but that will come later when it's ready. Any other questions, comments? Adam, Vincent?
What's the timeline for creating the branch?
So, go ahead.
So this is groups of the discussion. So my recommendation to make it as soon as we possibly can, and the main reason for that is that to make sure we will be able to hit the deliverables for the summit. So I'm open up for discussion what to do about, I don't want to do it right now for one simple reason. We have 80 plus pull requests sitting against pebbles, and the real question is what to do about them before we branch off Roxy.
Okay. Do you need the Havana bits to release first before you branch?
No. We will create a branch first. This branch will be completely off pebbles, which is identical to the pebbles code bits, and then we'll pull in Havana.
But saying 85 pulls a little bit makes it sound a little bit bigger than it is, right? There's 20-something pulls related to the CentOS rel support. There's about 10 pulls related to SSL support.
Yeah.
There's about 10 pulls related to Hyper-V. There's bodies of pulls.
Correct. There's some chunk for PFS, some stuff for the Solometer. There's basically there's a grouping around them.
Right.
And the chest approach.
So we have a couple of challenges here. Right. At the inbound rate, we're not going to catch up.
That's correct.
Unless, of course, we can find a way to accelerate testing and validation.
I just want to point out that most of the pull requests that are done by SUSE are actually actively tested because we ship that code.
Mm-hmm. I hear you.
You said they're actively tested. They ship.
Yeah. To be instant, they're tested on your SLES 11.3 platform or any other platforms?
On our SLES platform, but I mean, the smoke testing you are doing is on Ubuntu, so it's not validated on Ubuntu when you do on SLES when you do your testing. So we could, I mean, yeah.
I understand. I just want to be clear.
My understanding is the incoming rate isn't going to be what it was in the past. It's going to slow dramatically. I thought it's slowed dramatically.
Well, until we start doing Havana patches on Roxy, but yes, so that'll pick back up.
The answer is yes. So what I'm proposing is the following. I would like to basically put a moratorium for probably about a week, given the rate with which we can handle them, maybe a little bit more. And unless there is, critical bug which you wanted to fix right away on the Pebbles, to give us time to merge as many of the pull requests into the Pebbles as we can, and following the following standards. One is that reviews on the pull requests have been done, and there are votes to merge it in. If there is, negative votes, and obviously it's controversial, and we are not ready to merge it in. Obviously, review done, and the pull request is mergeable. On the current Pebbles code base, and then the smoke test passes, so we don't destabilize. The pull request doesn't pass a smoke test or not mergeable, it can be quickly, retarget at the current code base, and we'll of course try to get it into.
So you're saying we won't be accepting any new pull requests until we integrated the current ones.
That is correct. So basically,
we might have a backlog of pull requests waiting to be delivered. It doesn't make. Is the current state of pull requests a reasonable stopping point to the bridge from after?
Very good question.
And does anybody have outstanding pulls on the call?
Yes.
Well, I submitted it.
You have not submitted yet.
Unsubmitted.
I guess we will have some. I mean, we're still working on fixes, so.
So, how?
Sorry.
What's the point of the moratorium? I mean, if you have pull requests sitting and you don't accept, or you have no pull requests sitting but people have them, to me that makes no difference.
So here is a point of a moratorium is probably the wrong term. Let me try to put it in different terms. So the question is, which pull request would like to merge into the Pebbles before we branch Roxy all Pebbles? That is the crux of the matter.
And maybe we should have the other contributors contribute their opinion about that. And the pull request they have in their pipeline is really critical to Roxy, for example.
Correct. Basically, that's the thing. We don't want people to do the work twice, to submit it against both Pebbles.
And I'm just saying we don't know what we don't know, so we should solicit input from the community as to whether they have important things they would like to get in before us.
Very good point.
So one part that I don't understand is why don't we open up the Roxy branch right away and ask those people who have outstanding pull requests for the Pebbles branch to resubmit it also for the Roxy branch in case it makes sense there.
Well, so twofold. Fully a very good question, and the only reason I have for proposing what I did was to reduce the amount of work on the people, because that would require people to submit requests again against Roxy, and then people have to do the review and the testing on two different branches before, to ensure that it doesn't break something to be merged in. And the goal
but how is that different to the current situation? I mean, if you start to branch a Roxy branch from the Pebbles branch, it will likely not pass smoke testing against Havana, because we first need to actually fix everything in order to get Havana up and running. And by then, we can actually resubmit the patches if they still make sense on top of the Roxy branch, if they are still needed there. And by then, we can also do the smoke testing on Roxy for the patches that have not yet been merged.
Fair enough. And what do you propose to do as a pull request against Pebbles?
Well, I would simply take it independently. So if pull requests are reviewed on the Pebbles branch and they pass smoke testing, get them merged there. And if there are pull requests against the Roxy branch and they are reviewed okay, and let's merge them there. I mean, it's, as far as I understood, those are community branches, so let the community work on the branches instead of imposing, well, certain timelines and guidelines for them, which might not fit their needs, actually.
Very, very good point. So let me reiterate that the reason I'm suggesting to do as much merging into Pebbles before we branch off, to save the time for the people to do the smoke testing and to do review in two places. Given given the experience over the last many months of what it takes to merge that many pull requests and smoke test them, that takes roughly a week or even 2 weeks. Duplicating this amount of extra work, which serves very little purpose, to me is quite a bit of waste.
Yeah, but in the meantime, we community. I mean, we do have people willing to work on Havana support right now. And if we just wait, we are telling them, go away, which is not good.
Oh, very good point. The other possibility, we can basically say, okay, you can submit anything right now, that's not a problem, but we will not consider those to be merged before we branch off Roxy. And if later on you would like the same code base on the Roxy, we have to resubmit it again for Roxy.
So how about we simply do not smoke test the changes that the smoke test fine on the Pebbles branch for the Roxy branch, as long as we don't even have a smoke testable state on the Roxy branch. Because I assume that if we create a Roxy branch right now, it will not pass smoke testing against Havana. I'm pretty sure on that.
Well,
so
I think if we branch Roxy right now, because the Pebbles passing the smoke test, Roxy will also pass a smoke test, because it's the same code base initially.
Sure, but if you enable pull from source, then it will actually pull master code and then it will test something completely different.
Yeah, the OpenStack code is not the same, and this is what will break.
Exactly. And that's why we're doing the smoke test and all of that stuff to ensure that two platforms, the code base runs on two platforms.
I understand, but I'm willing to give a bet that it will not pass smoke testing when you switch the current code base simply to use the pull from source from the Havana tree on OpenStack, because there are certain changes that you need to do in order to actually get it to do anything. And those changes need to go somewhere. I mean, we have those changes here available. We would be willing to submit them upstream, but we can't because the branch is not created. And as long as we have changes also for Pebbles that smoke test they're fine, there's no reason to not merge them into the Roxy branch, as long as there's no smoke testing working on that branch.
Let me see if I can explain Arkadiy's dilemma. because of the time it takes for us to do a smoke test pass, and Adam's right, it'd be ideal to have a CI infrastructure for this, and we're working towards that. But because of the time it takes, if we accept pulls against 2 different branches, we have to do twice the work to smoke it. So one option is to accept things that pass smoke on one branch only, and say that's sufficient, and then accept the change on the other branch. But if we destabilize pebbles, it will be, right, recovering that is going to be basically work that takes away from the work on Roxy.
Of course, I'm not suggesting to destabilize pebbles. So let me reiterate. If a pull request merges fine against pebbles, if it is reviewed positively by the involved people, and if it passes smoke test on pebbles successfully, then I propose to merge it into pebbles and also into the Roxy branch without further retesting on the Roxy branch until the Roxy branch actually passes smoke testing by itself.
We're not planning to have Roxy not pass smoke.
Here, I have a question masquerading as a suggestion. Is for Victor and I guess everyone else. If we merge into Pebbles some of the pull requests and they pass muster, smoke tests, and other things, would it be feasible to simply merge Pebbles into Roxy periodically as we pull things into Pebbles? Whereas having passed that smoke test and coming from the same branching point, it seems like that would be a fairly safe thing, and that's done in a lot of other.
Technically, it's probably almost a matter of.
Is that what it
want to place to be there?
So I'm just suggesting that as a means of avoiding having to submit pull requests against 2 branches.
Fair enough. I think that will work until we start working on the Havana code base. And well, to me, I mean, I want to get that point as quickly as possible. So my hope is that we'll take the time to stabilize, merge all the pull requests, and then once we know that we are in a safe spot on the Roxy branch, bring in the Havana code base.
So I have a potential compromise to suggest, because I think that we all want to get this branch done as soon as possible, because we don't want to delay contributions. We want to give people a place to do that work.
Yeah.
What I was going to suggest is we could do it right now if we want.
Absolutely.
However, I think that there's some clear polls that we would take based on our assessment. It just makes sense to get a certain amount of the backlog taken down. Why don't we identify a day, not in the very near term, in which we're like, we will do this, we will branch now. If there's polls that we think we should be in both branches, you have a 2-day window to get those in and voted. As a community, we can vote on the pull requests. We can do a little review period to clean it up.
Rob, my concern is that 1 day will not be enough to materially clear the backlog, even of critical pulls. The key challenge that we face is figuring out what is the appropriate merge order for the pulls that we do want to bring, the pull requests we do want to merge in. I'm expecting that even for a dozen or more of the outstanding pull requests, we could be looking at 2 to 3 days.
So for a dozen, it's about 2 to 3 days. For all 8, 70 plus, we are talking about 1 to 2 days.
So what we're really effectively talking about doing then is branching Roxy, then working the Pebbles backlog for a week, and then merging it and basically doing a daily merge. Many changes on Roxy, so that like you suggested, the changes and the
Guys, explain the benefit of having Roxy if you can't do because code base have to be the same.
I don't know. What is the? Can anybody explain why that strategy helps? Because if we start diverging, then
the whole thing will start falling apart. That's the whole point.
Is anyone else noticing that the quality of our sound has dropped off badly? Because I'm missing a huge.
Have been bad all along.
All right.
This is yours.
It's also impossible to understand here.
Try to answer Rob's question. What is the benefit of branching off Roxy right now if we can't do any work on, we are not planning to do any work on that until we deal with all of the pull requests on Pebbles and then sync up the branch?
I don't understand. I mean, it's in most open source projects, it's quite usual to merge from another branch. And why cannot we do that with Pebbles, from Pebbles to Roxy? I don't understand. Even if the code diverges, then we can do that.
I think Arkadiy's still worried that we're going to introduce things that cause breaking changes that we're going to spend time tracking down when we do that. Well, I understand that point, but I think our point is that right now we're just losing time by doing nothing and waiting, and this is not helpful.
Here you, Adam, how about we do try to get to the middle ground again, and that is we will we can do a bunch of Roxy. We can do the pull request merge to whatever people do critical ones to the posts, and then move to Roxy. De facto, we not gonna process any of the pull requests against Roxy until that merges are completed. Whatever we want to take this up from the current pull request.
I think the strategy of branching right now is effective. We'll do a certain amount to try and pull up the Pebbles. It's possible that as the Pebbles back, a pull request is going to slow down. We're going to have people starting to work on Roxy, and there may be pulls that we're going to see less volume of activity in Pebbles because most of our teams are going to start over the Roxy branch.
So what is the earliest point in time that you would say it is possible to effectively get that branch?
Create a new branch, you mean?
So when will be the Roxy? When will you settle that task to get a branch that we can start work on it? So from the pull request and everything, there were all the work that you want to do before that. So what is kind of the earliest possible point in time when this branch will be available?
I'm not clear with the question, but let me try to answer. So we can create a Roxy branch today from over here. It will be exact duplicate of Pebbles, and that's about it. And then all it, the pull request are Pebbles, and Roxy current duplicate of what Pebbles is. If the question is, what is the earliest we can do taking the merging for the pull request that we want for our branch, then I think the question goes back to what are the key ones you want to merge.
I have a very simple suggestion. Sorry to interject. Branch now. We will no pull against Roxy for a week. Okay?
We will not merge any pull request.
We will not merge pull request Roxy for a week while some of the backlog on Pebbles those first. Those are going to take, actually, even simpler. Pull requests against from Pebbles to Roxy will take priority in Roxy sprint. Okay? Because that, and then, so if you're going to do a pull against Roxy, the risk that pull, you'll that pull after you merge in Pebbles changes. Okay? And so that way the pulls can surface against, and we can start allowing people to do pull requests and start doing development, which is what we want. They're not going to surface a lot of pulls. If they do surface pulls, the Pebbles first, and we will then have a merge conflict. That's simple enough? I think this is typical development merge branch maintenance.
So I think opening the branch without allowing pull requests to be merged in it is not useful. I mean, if we open the branch, then it has to be active. If it's not active, then there's no point in it, in my opinion.
I'm not suggesting it's not. I'm suggesting that the Pebbles pull requests take priority, and if they then create merge against Roxy, then we'll have to ask the person to resubmit their pull.
But that effectively means that we don't merge the pull request for Roxy. That means that we wait for the Pebbles pull request to be merged first before merging the Havana pull request. And
correct. Agree with that. So the reason, the way to look, if we branching off Roxy right now, Roxy off Pebbles right now, the way to look at that is all of the pull requests which are currently Pebbles, de facto also the pull request in a priority order against Roxy. So any new pull requests submitted against Roxy are behind them priority order.
Well, right, but we might.
We might adjust it.
We'll vote on them and we'll pull requests. See what
but process-wise, basically, all of the current pull requests again are de facto also pull requests against Roxy. So yes, you can submit a new pull request, and they will be in the current pipeline behind the current ones, just like you can do it against Pebbles too.
But submitting a pull request just for having it submitted doesn't make sense. The goal is to get it merged as soon as possible.
No.
That's my point.
So so do you have queued work that you expect to surface in Roxy in the next 2 weeks?
I believe so. Okay. We have people who have started to look at Havana and Crowbar.
Good. All right, so guys, we're working through issues that we may or may not have. We want to get the pulls processed in Pebbles, which is a good thing. We want to get new work going in Roxy, which is also a good thing. We're going to have to deal with merge conflicts as we go. Let's deal with them on a case-by-case basis.
So what does that mean? Does that mean that we actually merge Havana change in Roxy now, or? I mean, I'm definitely fine handling conflicts case by case, but.
Well, but here's so of the polls that we've got, about 50 of them relate to OpenStack. There's structural changes in OpenStack that probably we want in the Roxy branch before we. Right. Before we migrate the bits to Havana. Do you agree with that or not?
I agree with that, yes. But
okay.
So I think the crux of the question is, do we wait with cutting the Roxy branch until they've been merged into Pebbles, or do we create Roxy and ask whoever submitted those pull requests to also issue a pull request against the Roxy branch? Is that it?
No, I think it's not it, because the reality is that if we merge the pull request in Pebbles after the branch of Roxy, as long as Roxy is still de facto on the same code base, we can automatically merge them into the Roxy with very little work. I'm trying to avoid us to do the same review and testing on the pull request as well as in Pebbles.
We don't want to create a merge mess.
Yes.
Right. We've got a series of polls that should merge cleanly right now.
Let's put it this way. We do have a merge mess today anyway, because of all the 70 or 80 pull requests, they are conflicting with each other. We have a merge mess.
So I would recommend that we do the mess in one place instead of in two.
Right. Where people are now adding more changes.
The thing that my personal feeling is that we are in that mess because we have blocked the pull request from entering, and to wait for Roxy, and so to wait again, and we'll end up with a similar mess again. So I think go ahead.
No, I'm trying to get a judgment call on your side. How many, the rate of the pull request submitting over the next 2 weeks, how does that look like compared to, let's say, the previous 2 weeks?
I cannot tell. I mean, I would expect, I don't know, maybe 10, maybe 20 pull requests, maybe 5. It really depends on several things, so I cannot tell you. But I can tell you that we will not stop being active. We will continue doing stuff. So there will be pull requests.
Okay. I don't have any problem with that. I mean, but the numbers you're mentioning is smaller than the
active on Grizzly or on Havana.
Both. We have a product on Grizzly, so we are fixing issues on it, and we are working on the next version of the product, which will be based on the Havana. So we are also working on that.
So could you go through the backlog of pulls and identify which ones you think are essential to move into Havana, or are you just going to say all?
I would say all.
Yep.
So, I mean, everything we submitted is more or less things that we believe should really be in. I mean, it's not optional. It's fixing the real issues that we have.
Right. I completely agree with that, and I like the pulls are high quality. As soon as we start doing Havana work, you're going to create merge conflicts with these pulls. We're going to diverge. We know that, right?
But it's not necessarily a big divergence. That's my point. The move to Havana doesn't have to be a big divergence. Allowing people to start doing the small tweaks that they need to do for Havana might not cause merge conflicts. Maybe it will, but I think in most cases it won't actually.
But even if it does cause merge conflicts, I think we are fine with rebasing the patches to make them work for Roxy. That's really easy work.
I'm not sure what to do now because I don't have any problem to the scary part for me is that if we're going to do the work in 2 branches, our ability to process a pull request goes in half, especially if you're going to send pull request in 2 places.
I don't think that's actually the case. I don't think actually that's the case because the Roxy branch can't be smoke tested as it is of today, or as it would be of today. So there's very little additional work. If you smoke test it on Pebbles and merge it there, you only have to merge it also into Roxy, the corresponding same pull request, and that's it. It's not additional work.
But our team wants to switch into development on the Roxy branch. They don't want to be jumping back to do smoke tests on Pebbles.
So we can do the smoke on the Pebbles, on Roxy, ensure that passes smoke test there, and if it passes there,
that does nothing for the backlog.
Well,
yeah, but that's really a problem. If you open up a community branch like Pebbles, which you said at the beginning of the call, but you're also saying that you're not interested in spending time on smoke testing pull requests against that branch, then there's no point in maintaining this branch. And
well, no, that's not what I said. I said that in order to
wait, it is what I. So we're not saying we won't smoke it at all, but the velocity of pull requests will go down. Right. What we had been suggesting at the beginning, and we're very open to alternate plans, was that we would effectively have a focused effort to get the backlog of pulls down before we switched to Roxy. That was effectively the original proposal Arkady was making, so that we wouldn't have to deal with the merge, and then the slowdown as our team switches to Roxy would be not as would have less impact because the backlog would be smaller, which is why Arkady was suggesting things like a moratorium and things like that to let us catch up. There is a pattern in the past of times where what seems like a small change causes us to have several days of defect resolution, of resolving what the problems were, and so pulls for us usually go fine, but sometimes cause disruption. Do you understand our dilemma with this? We absolutely want the Pebbles branch to be stable, healthy, vibrant, without a pull backlog. At the same time, we want to switch our people to be able to focus on Roxy.
I understand, but I mean, I guess we are not talking about one person. I mean, we are talking about two different groups of people. So there's one group of persons that is actually working on developing the Roxy branch, and there's another group that is most likely doing the smoke testing on Pebbles. So as long as there's no smoke testing issue with any of the pull requests, both teams can work independently, right?
Our team isn't segmented like that. So when we track down smoke test issues, we're losing development resources, which hurts the community.
I mean, the only thing you have to do is actually to say this pull request breaks our smoke tests, and then defer it. I mean, you don't have to track down the cause of the issue.
Correct, which is what happens if we catch it in our test. If something makes it in and then has a conflict with something else that then breaks it that we miss, which has happened several times in the past, we do have to track it down. I agree with you. This is way below optimal. It's very frustrating for us. It's not how we want this to proceed. But we have to recognize the situation on the ground. So I'm still okay with going back to branch it now, do the work on the Pebbles backlog, do the merge over because it should be clean, and if people start having pull requests against the Roxy branch, we'll deal with it.
So let me suggest the following: we open the Roxy branch while the pull request backlog on Pebbles is being processed. We, SUSE, make sure that we merge back from Pebbles to Roxy, and so that when you guys join the Roxy efforts, it's all in a good state. So that way you can focus on merging things on Pebbles, and we will make sure that it will work fine when you come back on Roxy.
We're only our time window for doing that is a week. We don't expect to stay on Pebbles we have no real.
I don't believe you can merge all the 70 pull requests in 1 week if you do it the way you want to do it. There's no way to take 1 week.
I agree with you, and I'm not sure that we have to merge every pull request before we feel like we should switch. So we believe that there's a core set that are necessary, and then there's another set that we can go at a more leisurely pace on making sure they get reviewed. I don't know exactly what that set is, but based on my review of it, I think that we can prioritize those pull requests.
You do.
Right. The number one ones are around OpenStack because that's where we're going to see divergence next. So, and the Crowbar core stuff is not. We're not expecting code movement in Roxy, so those can be merged relatively cleanly. Does that make sense? I appreciate you guys helping I think that's a great thing to do. If we work on Pebbles polls, you make sure they get into Roxy. That sounds like a great teamwork.
Well, I would prefer the other. Move all of those.
We're the ones blocking the polls.
Absolutely.
Not Susan. So it doesn't make sense to do that. I'm only expecting us to do this for a week, and then switch.
I would like to propose another compromise, and that is that we use the time between now and Wednesday next week to clear as much of the backlog as is mergeable without a lot of effort. Then we cut the Roxy branch, and then we take up Vincent's suggestion of us focusing on merging into the remainder of the Pebbles, the remainder of the pull requests into Pebbles, while SUSE rebases those and merges them into the Roxy branch. Would that work for you, Vincent?
I believe so.
Vincent, if there is any pull request, the new pull request which you think the urgent to be merged in ensure that they are in both code branches, i.e. before we merge versus doing it later, I would appreciate if you identify them.
Well, I mean, ideally they would all be merged before, but for all practical purpose, if we can start developing on Havana without them, we will do that. So I think we would be ready to just start without them.
So, Arkady, can I ask you a question here? Are you happy with the compromise I suggested?
Yeah, that's fine with me. I mean, you're basically going back to let's try to merge as many things as we possibly can before we branch off, and try to branch off as quickly as we can.
Now, we're setting a deadline of Wednesday. In order to do that, what assistance do you need?
I need, well, as usual, as many hands on deck to do, and as many systems on which to run the smoke tests to make it happen. In parallel.
I think we need code reviews on the outstanding polls.
That's given.
Well, I know, but there's polls out there that are missing them from as leaders in this, we have not reviewed these polls and given them +1.
So okay.
Or any comment, right?
Fair enough. So everybody who is on the call, please review the pull requests outstanding and comment on them. Because before we can do any merging or any testing, that has to be done. They have to be candidates for merge.
Correct.
More than that, indicate in the comments, please, must go into Pebbles before branch.
That would be helpful too.
That would be helpful. All right, so that's concrete actionable items. Thank you, John. Anybody on the call object to this? That's the 25th, I believe.
Yeah. Today's 20th, so it's 5:00.
All right, at 10 a.m. Actually, what we'll do is we'll do it post our 10 a.m. call.
It's 26%.
Sorry?
Today's 20th.
Wednesday is the 25th. We have a 10 Central call on the 25th. We can review this decision, commit to it at that time. It's a community event time.
Mm-hmm.
That will be the pivot for that. We will review and commit that discussion. That's plan of record.
Okay.
Okay. So there's going to be a focus on review of outstanding polls. There's a note on polls if they're required.
Vincent, are you happy with this?
Yes.
Adam, are you still there?
He may have dropped off.
Okay, yeah, I think we lost him. Well, we are way over our time limit.
Yeah. Did the audio improve, by the way? I boosted the process.
Yes, it did. Very much.
Okay.
No.
I boosted the process thread level.
Yeah, it could be just more people dropping off and prove that. Doesn't matter. Okay, so we'll discuss it on the Wednesday call, and please schedule for the next Thursday,
Okay.
Longer term discussion about the branch.
Yeah. Hey, John, do you want to circulate this plan? I've tried to capture it on the Etherpad, but do you want to circulate it?
I'll let you go, but I didn't want to interfere with your editing, but I'll tweak it and I'll send it out.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right,